applies. Initiatives like COVAX, but there is a lot more we can do.
We need to build, not just supply and future supply, but support to public health systems in the developing world, and over time, manufacturing capability in the developing world, because only then can we begin to make all our shared worlds safe again for all of us in the threat of a pandemic which knows no limits.
One solution to bridge this gap is to continue building strong, impactful partnerships. At Bloomberg Philanthropies, we're rallying businesses to take steps towards net zero emissions, and we're working with cities and governments to ensure they invest in economic recovery efforts that strengthen the fight against climate change.
We are shared guardians of our planet. All stakeholders must develop better ways to ensure our collective accountability for our planet.
One important gap we need to bridge is the global cyber capacity gap. We can bridge this gap by making sure that tools and systems to address cyber threats and cyber crime are available to all and that they are used to foster peace and cooperation.
Ce qu'il nous faut retrouver, c'est la voie de la coopération, la voie de l'engagement, la voie de la confiance dans ces instances qui sont cruciales, comme l'OMC, comme les Nations Unies ou l'Organisation internationale du travail.
Les acteurs de la finance publique, qui représentent 12% des investissements dans le monde, ont un rôle clé à jouer dans la reprise durable et la réduction des fractures et des inégalités.
We can bridge this gap by putting the fight against inequality at the heart of our international partnerships. We must bring the public and private sectors together in cooperation with civil society. One solution to bridge the gap is investing in human development, in particular education.
We must invest in human well-being, promote a globally coordinated response, and build resilience to future shocks.
We can all see the gaps widening all around us, north-south, the rich and poor. We have to find a way where this enormous growth of prosperity globally is shared more equally, and how the capital markets help close that gap, not increase it to the point way past acceptability, but to a point where it is no longer bridgeable.
We were part of the first meeting of the Paris Peace Forum, and one of the things that was so important 3 years ago was a new vision, a vision that would rely on people and partners and multi-stakeholder innovation. As we come together in 2021, it's an opportunity to build on 3 years of progress and pursue together a path for progress. Thank you.
Welcome to the closing ceremony of this 4th edition of the Paris Peace Forum. Wow, we had 3 exceptional days that started with Vice President Kamala Harris, President Macron and other heads of state, that continued yesterday with lots of initiatives we launched, lots of projects we presented, and now this closing ceremony where we'll do 2 things. First of all, we wanted to make sure that we acknowledged and gave indications on what was happening for climate in Glasgow, almost next door, I would say. And so, first of all, we'll provide you with an assessment of what happened at the COP26 in Glasgow, with a range of high-level speakers, starting in a few minutes with John Kerry, US Presidential Envoy for Climate, and following with others. And I will soon call Pascal Lamy, the president of the Paris Peace Forum, to join me on stage for this. And then, at the end of the closing ceremony, 45 minutes from now, as is the tradition, we will announce the 10 projects that we have selected to be followed, to be supported by the SCUP, by the Scale-Up Committee of the Forum, all over 2022, projects to which we will provide visibility support, venture support, connections, connections with institutions, political lobbying, etc. But first, I think it would be good to start this closing ceremony by giving you a summary of what happened, to reminisce about all the things that happened during this ceremony. And as is usual, Auditoire has compiled a best of the best moments that we had during these 3 days. And they've already wrapped up this video, which we will now show.
Welcome to the 4th edition of Paris Peace Forum.
We are delighted to be back in person and online in this hybrid format.
We need not remain divided between the North and the South.
This is not about charity. This is about our duty.
Je crois comme vous au multilatéralisme, mais je crois au multilatéralisme efficace.
Nous allons donc commencer avec ce premier segment.
Let's start with the first segment, which is the count of COP26 and climate. Where do we stand? And I'd like to ask Pascal Lamy to come up, who is the president of the forum.
Good evening, good afternoon to you all. So we know there's something important happening in Glasgow. Whatever is the final level of ambition of the final declaration will be important. If it's more than we expected, it is important. If it's less than we expected, it is also important. So in order to address this issue, we, of course, as Justin just said, have John Kerry, who is presently attending the plenary of the Glasgow conference now, and which we will extract from the conference the moment I'm told he is online.
He's online.
So that's the great news. If he's online, we will see him now. And I'm just waiting for this moment. John, very, very many thanks for taking a bit of time to be with us. We know you. I don't think there's any reason for me to tell the people in the Paris Peace Forum or online who is John Kerry. John Kerry is a great friend of climate, a great friend of the Paris Peace Forum. So thanks for being with us, John. 1, 2, 3 questions, very short. Number one, which I think you can expect, where is Glasgow going? What's your take on this conference? What can you tell us of where we are now seen from your point of view?
Well, thank you, Pascal, and it's a privilege to join the Forum de Paix de Paris literally in the background, there are speakers in the plenary forum as we are discussing sort of the final choices that we face here. And we're in a critical moment where we either come up with a very, I think, strong, forward-leaning, ambitious plan that is detailed and comprehensive, that deals with mitigation, deals with adaptation, deals with resilience, deals with finance, very seriously with finance. And my hope is that we will do that. Obviously, we all know the world is waiting for something positive here. I think this COP has been more productive in terms of ambition than any COP I've ever been to. Paris obviously laid out a set of outline of plans for how we go forward. But Paris, everybody wrote their own plan without the kind of evidence we have today, without the sense of urgency, without the understanding of the science, without the money that we now have on the table, without the private sector having stepped up the way it has. So this is a profound transition. And in my judgment, we're poised to lay the pathway for these next 10 years. People wanted us to come here and keep 1.5 degrees alive. Well, 65% of global GDP has signed up for steps that are certified to help keep 1.5 alive. And the other day with China, we made an agreement that hopefully advances our ability to bring some of the others to the table. So I'm excited. But at the other hand, we have a couple of, some folks, you never in a negotiation like this with almost 200 countries are going to have everybody happy. I mean, I'm unhappy about some components of what we're going to do, but we see the bigger, greater importance of coming together, and we're going to overlook a few of those small things in the interest of making this happen. We need every country to approach it with that attitude in the next hours.
Thanks, John. You just mentioned this agreement, this common language, which you made public with China, and which understandably, and well done, John, made a bit of news. Now, can you tell us a bit more about that? I mean, was it tough to get to an agreement with the Chinese on this? Do you believe it's an area where whatever geopolitical rivalry we now have between the US and China, this is an area where global cooperation, and you know that that's a Paris Fisher, and that's what we're after. So what's your take on this? Is it something which you believe opens hopes for more cooperation between US and China? Or is this something that, you needed to pay some lip service to Glasgow and then you go back to business as usual?
No, there's no business as usual. And by the way, I do not believe that Glasgow is business as usual. I think there are some remarkable commitments that have been made here. The First Movers Coalition, the deforestation commitments, $9 billion from President Biden, $13 billion from Europe, UK. They're just, transformational initiatives on the table, literally dozens of them. And this COP is not defined just by the NDCs that people put forward. It's defined by many of these other offerings from the private sector, from NGOs, from many, and from countries around the world. So I'm excited about that. I mean, the IEA said that if everything that is on the table now is actually done over the course of now till 2050, we would be at 1.8 degrees. If you look at it just till 2030, then we'd be at about 2.4 to 2.7 degrees. But the trend line here and manifested, affirmed, reaffirmed, if you will, by the agreement we made with China, is that there is extra cooperation coming out of here. There is cooperation at a level that there's cooperation. You can hear the applause for something back there that I'm missing, and you're missing too as a result. The level of cooperation that we are seeing is got the ability to be able to accelerate the reduction of emissions. And China signed on to that. That is precisely one of the things China said. If we cooperate together and we share information, we share data, we share expertise, we come together, we have the ability to accelerate the reductions, which is critical for China. Secondly, China signed up to a very specific process next year where they have to come up with an ambitious climate action plan, a methane action plan, which we will be working on them with. And the fact is that we are in a place now where China never was, which is saying they are going to reduce methane and look to us and other people for help in doing so. And third, on coal, they signed on to a specific date or timeline by which they will begin to phase down, and they agreed for the first time ever to say they will use best efforts with us in order to accelerate the reduction of coal. Now, I hate to say this to you, I've just been handed a note which says I must urgently get back to my seat immediately for reasons I'm not sure. I don't know what the applause was, but I need to get back. If you'll permit me, I apologize.
Of course. And thanks very much for being with us, John. And don't forget Antarctica.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. And ladies and gentlemen, we are going now to move to the next video, which is going to appear. And guess whom we are going to listen to for a few minutes. Guess who? Guess who? Whoop, 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 whoop. The Environment Minister.
尊敬的女士们、先生们、朋友们，很高兴出席第4届巴黎和平论坛闭幕式。此次论坛的成功举办，对促进国际合作、维护多边主义、推动后疫情时代全球治理具有重要意义。我对法方做出的努力表示赞赏。气候变化是全人类的共同挑战，也是全球治理的重要方面。对于这项工作而言，巴黎有着特殊的意义。2015年12月，正是在这里，联合国气候变化框架公约近200个缔约方达成了巴黎协定，进一步巩固了全球气候治理的制度基础。国际社会应坚持巴黎协定不动摇。COP26 是巴黎协定进入实施阶段后首次缔约方会议，各方就国家自主贡献、适应、技术、资金等议题开展了谈判磋商。中方积极建设性地参与了2年来的磋商进程。习近平主席在世界领导人峰会上强调，国际社会应维护多边共识，聚焦务实行动，加速绿色转型。中方和美方发布了中美关于在21世纪20年代强化气候行动的格拉斯哥联合宣言，承诺继续共同努力，与各方一道加强巴黎协定的实施。中方期待各方重信守诺，加强合作，制定切实可行的目标，有效应对气候危机。发达国家要在减排问题上作出表率，尽快兑现气候资金承诺，并进一步加大资金的支持力度，同时在技术、能力建设等方面为发展中国家提供有力的支持。中国始终坚定落实联合国气候变化框架公约及其巴黎协定，把碳达峰、碳中和纳入生态文明建设整体布局，正在加快形成碳达峰、碳中和1+N 政策体系，力争2030年前实现碳达峰，2060年前实现碳中和。这将是全球历史上用最短的时间实现的最高碳排放降幅。女士们、先生们、朋友们，行胜于言，让我们携起手来，积极行动，共同应对气候变化挑战，为建设清洁美丽的世界贡献力量。谢谢大家。
After John Kerry and Minister Wang Wenchu, the Minister of Ecology and Environment of China. So after hearing from the two most important countries regarding climate change, we'll now hear from former Secretary General of the UN, Ban Ki-moon, whom, as you know, is President and Chair of the Global Green Growth Institute and has played an important role in these issues. And so we also asked him about his assessment of COP27, of COP26. And here's what he had to say.
Ladies and gentlemen, COP26 in Glasgow has just ended, and I'm pleased to share my first assessments of where we stand. I have mixed feelings on COP26. We can view the glass as half full or half empty. Just before COP26, the assessment was that we are on track to reach a warming of 2.7 degrees Celsius, which would be a grave catastrophe. The impact of the climate crisis has been readily visible in record heat waves, forest fires, droughts, and much more. And the impacts of the pandemic-induced economic crisis, exacerbated by the climate crisis, are a code red for humanity. Did COP26 bring enough change to turn the tide? There was certainly lots of promises. Net to zero has become conventional wisdom, with the governments and companies making net to zero pledges. The world will judge the success of COP26 by watching whether we step up and deliver on the promises. Certainly, the ambitious NDC 2030 commitments by the COP President, the United States, European Union, and other countries, including Korea, are getting closer to the targets. While I am encouraged by key countries' commitment to net zero, there is not yet a 2030 commitment that is a credible milestone to net zero for other key countries, most importantly, China. The most optimistic glass is half full assessment came from the International Energy Agency, which calculated all net zero and other promises made and concluded we could limit the warming to 1.8 degrees Celsius. That is a major improvement from the 2.7 degrees Celsius, and COP26 could be considered a success. On the other hand, I also sympathize with the young people who have lost patience and accuse world leaders of greenwashing. Promises of ending all deforestation by 2030 and oil companies promising net zero, they need to demonstrate evidence and credible progress. And that is my message. Big promises were made, but we must now deliver action, climate action, to accelerate renewable energy adoption, to slow down and end the sale of internal combustion engine cars, and to rehabilitate ecosystems. There is so much to do that it can seem overwhelming, but it must be done. To make real progress, we must push the climate solutions and, at the same time, end our bad practices, end fossil fuel subsidies, end the use of coal before 2050. And we must not forget those who will lose out. Climate justice is real, and it will require a just transition for workers in the fossil fuel and other brown industries. It will require support for the poor and the vulnerable, hit hard by the pandemic and the climate crisis, like the 25 million climate refugees we already see every year. We need climate finance above $100 billion per year. We need at least half of it for adaptation, and we need to start addressing loss and damage. We cannot seriously find a sustainable future if we leave half the world behind. I will certainly continue to do what I can as president and chair of the GGGI, Global Green Growth Institute, and as a former Secretary General of the United Nations. You can count on my full support, including, most importantly, you, young people who are fighting the good fight. Let us prove the doubters wrong and show that the glass is half full, that together we can achieve a world that is sustainable and just for all. Let us keep 1.5 degrees alive. Thank you.
Now we will turn to the third and last guest we have on this round about what's happening in Glasgow. And we have invited Verna, the boss of the European Development Bank. Willkommen zum Paris Peace Forum, Verna. I have two questions for you. The first one will not surprise you. We've just heard about that from John Kerry. We just heard from that from the Chinese minister, from Mr. Ban Ki-moon. What's your take on what's happening in Glasgow? That's question number one. And I have a second question a bit later. Verna, up to you.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and thank you and Justin and all your team for the enormous leadership on this issue. We are very, very grateful to you, and I'm grateful that John gave us a little bit of inspiration today as well. Just as well, I listened attentively to the words of the former Secretary General of the United Nations, with whom we cooperate so very well on adaptation. Let me, before I come to some personal observations on the outcome of COP26 in Glasgow, let me highlight that the European Investment Bank, although it is the biggest multilateral financier for climate action, is not a party here. It's not a party in the negotiations. We believe nevertheless that our Glasgow package, built on the climate bank commitments that the EIB has made over the last years, have contributed to build a positive agenda on climate finance and investment. Our work has been focusing on innovation, on development, and the key investment areas bringing the world to net zero and to adaptation. And in this context, we have been working on a climate bank roadmap with the ambition to mobilize not less than 1 trillion euros on climate action by 2030, and to ensure full Paris alignment of all activities already since the beginning of this year, shifting away from a pathway that would lead the world to an environmental, financial, and social disaster. Let me offer three personal observations focusing on the finance dimensions of the COP26 discussions. One positive, one rather cautious, or two rather cautious ones. Let me start with the good news. I believe, through some of the announcement we have seen this last week, that we have reached a real turning point for finance. The finance industry, international capital markets, if you like, has now really understood the 1.5 degree challenge. As a result, sustainable finance has now moved center stage. And this is a fundamental paradigm change that we could observe over the last years in the financial sector, and I'm very grateful for that. The launch of COP26 of the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, with $130 trillion of assets under management and ownership, perhaps symbolizes this challenge and change. What does this mean in practice? Any serious corporate or government, for that matter, looking to minimize its cost of capital will need to explain convincingly how it intends to align with the Paris goals. An encouraging element is that these commitments are now increasingly backed by standardized tools and metrics. So we're making progress also on the methodological front. So yes, different companies will take different pathways, but if they want capital market backing, they need to be transparent and credible in their business plan. This is extremely good news. We know that global savings are sufficient to finance the transition. There is no shortage of capital per se. But now we have a much clearer mechanism to channel savings into green investment. It's not perfect. There's still much to be done, but we have entered a different era for finance compared to where we were, for instance, at COP21. But there are limits, of course. I would stress 2 points that need further attention, and they will have to be addressed the latest by COP27. As the developed world, we have to increase our efforts towards the developing world for good reasons. COP26 has focused on the $100 billion issue, and we need to deliver what is an old promise as soon as possibly we can. There is no excuse anymore. But the real question is much broader. As the findings of International Energy Agency shows, trillions of investment are needed in these countries. We need many new technologies that together will bring about the change we need. All these technologies need to be green, accessible, and scalable. And the question remains how to leverage limited public funds to scale private investment. And there, the multilateral development banks can play a significant role. At our bank, we have been very active and launched several initiatives: the City Climate Finance Gap Fund, the Adaptation Plan to scale up investment and work together with our partners to counter the impact of climate change, and the Emerging Market Climate Action Fund together with Allianz Group to support climate investment and access to electricity in developing countries. Finally, advances on sustainable finance. I remain concerned that markets are not sufficiently developed for natural capital. Our natural carbon sinks, forests, oceans, wetlands, soils. The announcements this week, notably to end deforestation by 2030, are of course good news. What is still missing is a comprehensive policy framework to allow these values to be captured by markets. We need further creativity and bring fresh thinking to this problem. Let me conclude with another note of optimism. Beyond the negotiations, there is a growing sense of pragmatism and a can-do approach, and not only doomsday scenarios among all actors. In Glasgow, we have learned about many concrete actions that are no longer being pursued in isolation. We must support the effort for systemic, multilateral, large-scale solutions that will bring us to net zero. We are ready to play our part.
Thank you, Verna. And that's precisely my second question, and you've already touched upon it in your first part of your remarks. If Glasgow produces what you just said it will produce, how does this affect the EIB's activities? How does it change your business model? How does it change the way you allocate your resources? Is it something that, following COP26, EIB will do differently from what you've been doing so far? Or are you on a sort of already stabilized trajectory that will help Europe, and that's your first area of investment, but also other parts of the world to move to -55 in 2030 and 0 in 2060?
Well, we have changed the course of our action 2 years ago when I talked at the General Assembly of the United Nations in the Climate Summit. And there we set the course anew, and we're pursuing it consequently with the support of our shareholders, which are the 27 member states of the European Union. But I must say that we need to go further into this direction, because it is naive to believe that by turning a couple of screws in our behavior in Europe and the member states of the European Union, we will change the global situation and meet the global challenge. And if we want to meet the global challenge, then we must very, very closely bring climate, innovation, and development together. And this is exactly what we are doing. This is why we have set up a specialized branch within the bank that will not only specialize, but also increase our activity in this field, and I hope we'll get the support of the member states for that, because the solution of the issue will only be with a much closer cooperation between developed and developing nations, but also with a much closer involvement of the private sector. And there I'm quite optimistic. I have so many partners in the private sector, in the private finance industry, which saying now our asset holders, our investors, they're expecting us to be credible and dynamic in this field, and that makes me optimistic.
Many thanks, Verna. Thanks again for being with us for this closing ceremony on a late Saturday afternoon. Many thanks. We are very grateful and thankful to you, and as usual, hope to see you next year at the Paris Peace Forum. Many thanks. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Verna.
Well, Pascal, I think we heard mixed assessments, I would say, and we know COP26 is not finished. Decisively mixed assessment. I heard optimism from Kerry. I heard voluntarism from Minister Wong. I heard the glass half full that Ban Ki-moon diagnosed, and I heard largely good news seen by Verna Hoyer, as well as a couple of points of concern. So the picture is mixed, but there's an overall sense that it could actually work out. Was that your impression?
That's my impression from what we just heard. We tried in this sequence to have a sort of major NGO leader to tell us what he or she was thinking about what was happening in Glasgow. Their answer was, sorry, but we are too busy trying to push on the final declaration. We have too much to do in Glasgow. So I'm waiting for their reaction to give you my overall assessment. But I think the sort of Ban Ki-moon sort of prudent approach, half full, half empty, is probably the right thing. Although I believe two things are clearer than they were in the pre-negotiations. One is that the 1.5 is more solid after Glasgow than it was before Glasgow. I'm not saying it's totally solid. You will look at the precise wording of the declaration. But there's been a plus there. And of course, remaining within 1.5 is absolutely crucial. We all know that. The second, I think, advance is that they have made steps forward in transparency, accountability, mechanisms that avoid greenwashing, and there's still quite a lot of that in the business. And that's something which is very important because it's the final accountability to citizens, to shareholders, to consumers that is in charge. And lastly, there has been a bit of sectoral steps which are welcome on things like coal, I think like investment in fossil fuels, and also in areas like forests. So I see small steps which show that this notion, which finally is the essential one, if we want to remain within the 1.5, given where we are, given what science tells us where we are, we have to accelerate. And I think, this is what we had in mind from the very beginning of the Paris Peace Forum. How can we, how can you, the partners, the project holders, the ones that are putting initiatives in this sort of platform, how can we contribute to this acceleration is really the strategic question.
Agree. Thank you very much, Pascal, for moderating this session on climate. And we'll now move to the last segment of this closing ceremony, and I will ask Trisha, the president of the steering committee of the Paris Peace Forum, to join me on stage.
I can tell it's been a long day when you have to refer to the cue cards to remember my designation. Thank you to all of you who have gathered here with us for the 4th edition of the Paris Peace Forum. Thank you, Pascal, for sharing your thoughts. And in that spirit, I am going to ask you, can you share a few thoughts? We are at the last day, the culmination of the 4th edition. Are you proud of the work that has been done here? And what are you particularly feeling proud about?
I guess the first important thing that I take away from this edition is that we've been joined by the US government for the first time. As you know, the Trump administration did not see it fit to join the Paris Peace Forum, neither Donald Trump himself in 2018 he was there in Paris, nor his administration in the next 2 years. And so it was really important for us that on top of all the Americans present at the Paris Peace Forum, the NGOs, the citizens, the companies, the philanthropic foundations, many of them are supporters of the forum, we have also the US government as such. So that's the first takeaway. And for me, the second takeaway is really the use of this platform that is the Paris Peace Forum, drawing attention, giving visibility, not only to the 80 projects that we've selected, and each of them would deserve a place on the spotlight, but also to the initiatives we've launched, and I think very powerful one, whether they are on military and climate, that was launched yesterday morning by 15 nations, what military can do for CO2 reduction, whether on supporting independent media in low and medium income countries, the very important net zero space initiative on debris in outer space that was launched yesterday with many parties, and which I think will indeed make a difference and also draw attention on problems that people didn't used to pay attention to, public opinion, politicians, etc. Many other initiatives that we had. That's my second takeaway, that is the platform that is the Paris Peace Forum is playing its role. But what were your takeaways from this edition?
I have to tell you, it was a special joy to do a little bit of a throwback to the first edition, the project that we had, which was Data to Combat Torture. And this year, we announced that they officially are part of a Netflix series. So as you said, from Paris Peace Forum to Netflix has been quite a good story for us. I also really enjoyed engaging with the project leaders directly more today. Specifically, there's an amazing project that I got to know more about today, called LOBA, which looks at how you can truly provide therapeutic-based services to survivors of sexual violence who are coming out of conflict zones. And as someone who works in this space, I can tell you the narrative is almost very often centered around punish the perpetrators without taking into account from a very survivor-centric space. Also, great project by GIZ on the impact of future technology on gender. And they had this little tablet with buttons that you could press that popped up a lot of data and stuff to look at. So please go and look at their website. And also, just the overall experience of being here in person. I had a few people who came up to us who said, I was at COP, and it was just like waiting for 2-3 hours to enter, and then not having a steady Wi-Fi connection, and then having to run back to the hotel, that the logistics was not a very pleasant experience. And in contrast, when they entered this platform, it was a very pleasant surprise. And for that, we have to thank a lot of our partners. And just the highlight for me always remains getting to work with the Secretariat, Robin, who champions the cause of the project leaders, Marc, Remy, Vivian, Nicolo, and Cécile. There are so many of you. I cannot take all of your names, but that is a big treat for me every year.
Thank you. We'll now move to the announcement of the 10 projects that we've selected. And I should hasten to say that these are not the best project among the 80, because this notion of the best project doesn't really have a meaning. Rather, they are the projects that we think are not only of great value, but also projects that we can support, that the Paris Peace Forum can meaningfully help during 2022 by this mentorship program that we've put in place called the SCUP, the Scale-Up Committee. And so these 10 projects will be supported, will be followed, will be mentored during a whole year. And the jury has deliberated and will now be announcing the 10 laureates of this year.
Right, this is why I told you all during the opening ceremony that our work does not stop here on the last day, and it carries on through the projects. So, the 10 projects, we have 4 of them on site here who will join us on stage, and we have 6 of the project leaders who will tune in online. So I encourage you to, reach out to them, find out how you can support them, congratulate them. So with that, the first project is Global Cities Fund for Inclusive Response. It is a project led by the Mayor's Migration Council, which aims to respond to the unmet needs of cities as they support migrants, people with refugee status, internally displaced people during COVID-19. Can we have them on stage, please? Thank you.
Congratulations. Congratulations. You can stay here. The second project that happens to be on site and which was selected by the jury is supporting Arab women at the table. This project is led by the Arab Reform Initiative, and it aims at increasing women's meaningful inclusion in peace processes in the MENA region by improving their ability to influence outcome and establish post-conflict gender egalitarian frameworks.
The third project is by the OECD that is on AI Policy Observatory. So it pushes for inclusive hubs when it comes to framing public policy and monitor the development and use of trustworthy AI. Very important and poignant topic at this point. Congratulations. Thank you.
The fourth project the jury selected is Transforming Aid Delivery with Big Data. It's a project led by a partnership between the Ministry of Digital Economy of Togo, Give Directly, Innovation for Poverty Action, and the Center for Effective Global Action. It's a digital payment program leveraging AI and mobile technology to provide social aid to the most vulnerable in Togo. Please join us, Madam Minister.
The fifth project is the Coral Reefs of the High Seas Coalition. The project is led by the Conservation International and is a global alliance of partners that aims to generate the science and political support and strategic communication that is necessary to protect coral reefs in the high seas.
And this one is remote, and so we'll be welcoming these projects there. Hello. The sixth project is Environmental Impunity Index Latin America. This project, led by the Center on Impunity and Justice measures environmental impunity. This project, led by the Center on Impunity and Justice, measures environmental impunity considering crimes, harm, institutional capacity, policy mechanisms, and actual degradation at a subnational level in Mexico. Congratulations.
The next project is the Workforce Disclosure Initiative. It is led by Share Action, and it improves the quality of jobs in multinational company operations and supply chains by enhancing corporate transparency and accountability. It also highlights the work it does to support SDG 8, which is decent work for all.
The eighth project is called Civic Space Guardian. This project, led by Directorio Legislativo, consists of creating a web tool to alert and provide information on proposed laws or policies likely to impact civic space in Latin America. Congratulations.
The ninth project is the Sentinel, a pandemic preemption system. It is led by the African Center of Excellence for Genomics of Infectious Diseases. Is a pandemic and an outbreak early warning and response system that detects viral threats in real time and stops them before they can spread.
Bravo. And the 10th and last project is aptly called the Decimals Fund. This project, led by the Degrees Initiative, aims to build the capacity of developing countries to evaluate solar radiation management geoengineering by giving support to scientists in the Global South while they study and debate its potential effects. Congratulations. Bravo. We will now do a group picture with the winning projects, or the laureate projects that are on site, and the remote ones. Yes, they are now in a mosaic, so we have all of them, and I'm asking if the photographer can have all of us, if he wants us to move towards the screen. No, I think we're good. Congratulations.
Thank you. Honestly, we do understand that this is a massive space and we couldn't accommodate as many people as we wish we could have to respect COVID concerns, but the project leaders, you have just brought so much to the forum, and we really thank you for coming here in person, as well as for joining us digitally, and you know, as always, being the true stars of the forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
I will now invite Pascal to come back on stage to conclude with us this closing ceremony. Pascal, what is your takeaway at the very end of this 4th edition?
I have many things in my head to answer your question, but we have little time. Of course, in the position I am, my role, my duty is to look back, learn from our experience and look forward. I have a fantastic operational team. We'll come back to that in a minute. But I want you to know that's what I believe. I think this innovation that we started in 2018 is working. It's flying. As I said, when we were, for some of us, hosted by the French president for a dinner this week, had we thought that when we launched this, you, Justin, the French president, myself, and a few others, had we thought that we would be where we are tonight? The answer would have been, come on, you're dreaming. So we are, in a way, now allowed to dream for what next, building on what has been done. And when I say what has been done, frankly, believe me, we know that the way we've structured this innovation, the way this platform has little by little grown, the way it works is very little because of us. We had the idea, we're trying to run the thing okay, but the reason why it works is because you are there. And the you are the ones who are here, partners, project holders, the teams, the ones that are online and that couldn't come but did participate. And we have a very good number, which I think will appear in the media in a few minutes, of what was the real rate of participation to the Paris Peace Forum this year. So our role is to leverage your energy. You have the capacity to move this forward. You have the capacity to bring new projects. You have the capacity to succeed when you enter into this scale-up incubation system, which, by the way, benefits from the experience of previous years. The best of the sort of godfathers and godmothers which we attribute to the projects that have been selected this year, we only allocate the best of those who have been proved the best for the last year. So we gain in experience, we improve the system, and be assured that we will keep doing that. It sometimes is decisions which are not easy to take, because basically we're all friends. And when we say we would prefer Mrs. X or Mrs. Y, it may not work, but that's the way to go. So we have a margin of improvement, we have a margin of growth. We will keep improving the substance of what we do, and we've learned a lot with experience. I think there is room for this platform to grow. And I am a believer that this sort of platform, which juxtaposes supply of ideas, projects, initiatives, and you know now that the range has moved from just project to projects plus initiatives, the way supply grows triggers a way demand for good project grows, and the bigger the platform becomes, the more efficient it is, and the better it is for you all. So that's the concept, that's where we want to go. I think what's happened this year with this hybrid format, and I must say, I'm participating in quite a lot of other international initiatives. The hybrid format is the most difficult. We all know that doing physics, we know how to do. We now know to do how 100% virtual. Making things work hybrid is a technical performance. What we just had here, now, in a few minutes, which is John Kerry speaking from Glasgow, with me physically here. The project holders that were there on the screen the moment the others were, I can tell you, look at the number of people who are behind the screen in this. So it's technically incredibly difficult. We've made it, you've made it, so my basic thought is, for this time, I'm happy.
Thank you, Pascal.
Do you mind if I just...
Now turning to you, Trisha.
Thank you. That's the perfect segue, because I really want to take a moment to just thank Auditoire and our media partners who have put on this beautiful show for all of us. And also, PPF Secretariat is going to hate me, but if you all feel comfortable just standing so the rest of the people here can just really thank you and acknowledge you, because the Secretariat, they work non-stop. I've worked with many organizations, but if you don't keep up with their pace, you'll be left behind, truly. So if the PPF Secretariat could just stand up, because we can't take all your names, but we need to acknowledge you.
Thank you, and congratulations. I would like to go a step further and draw special attention on someone who has been on my side from the beginning, from when I started this whole adventure, and who has been a real co-creator of the forum, and that's our Secretary General, Marc Reverdin. Marc, would you come on stage? The reason I'm drawing attention...
The good thing with Justin is that you don't need to ask him to stand up.
Yeah, I generally stand a few feet away from Marc, because otherwise he draws attention to his size and mine. But we've been, in spite of that height difference, we've been working really well with Marc, long hours during the day, long hours during the night, especially in the 2 months before each edition. And Marc has been relentless, sparing no hour, no private sacrifice to ensure that the forum would happen, that we would deliver on project, on initiative, on the event. And the reason I'm drawing attention to Marc is that, unfortunately, all stories have an end, and Marc will be leaving the Paris Peace Forum in a few weeks from now to go to new adventures, and I will be sad. I will be sad, and I will not remain alone, but I know that no one will really replace Marc, and I want to thank him from the bottom of my heart.
I will tell you a story about Marc, which I knew in a previous life and which I recruited in a previous position. And so, you know, when you recruit people, you look at what they've done. And I was told, Marc Reverdin, speaks French. Oh, good. He speaks English. Oh, he speaks Italian. Oh, right. He speaks Farsi. Oh, not bad. So will you recruit Marc Reverdin? And I looked at his CV and he saw that he had studied music. He has a musicology background, and that's the reason why I recruited him.
Thank you, Pascal. I'll be very short. I'd like to thank you, Justin, of course, for his trust and support through all these years. I've been extremely happy and delighted to contribute to this extraordinary event. But I would like to thank especially the team which is behind, because I've been working a lot. But all this wouldn't have been possible. Tricia said a word already without, I don't know, maybe 100 people from 2018 who worked at the Secretariat, building the forum every year, which was extremely tough and tiring, but so much, with so much also fantastic outputs and results. So once again, I'd like to thank all the people behind, because, I mean, I may have some qualities, but also a lot of limits, yeah, my thanks goes to the people behind.
Marc, thank you again. Thank you from the, once again, bottom of my heart. Well, it's now coming to a close, and let me just tell you what you can expect for next year, for 2022. Well, for next year, you can expect the same dates, because the dates have never changed. 11 to 13 of November 2022. You can expect the same place, because we want to give this event a place. Even if it's a global event, we know where we stand. We stand between North and South. We stand between East and West. And what I'd like to do to close is to thank all of you for your energy and tell you, please come back on November 11, 2022. Thank you.
See you, folks. And let me thank the one that cannot thank himself, which is Justin. I will add Tricia. They have a sort of now well-established track record of Rosie and John animation at the Paris Peace Forum. They are extremely good on the scene, and we all like that. But Justin, who is the brain where the initial little germ appeared. I don't know whether it's 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. History will settle this question. But he is the one that really makes that thing work all the year. I can tell you the Paris Peace Forum is not a train that quits the station tomorrow, and that will nicely land a year from now in another event in the Grande Halle de la Villette. It necessitates a lot of efforts, a lot of direction. It necessitates to solve a lot of problems, and he's the one that really is after that, day, night, 24 hours on 24 hours and on a 365 days year record. So Justin, many thanks, and I think you can all thank him. He will not do that himself.
Thank you, Pascal. Thank you. And once again, see you in 2022.